I will now call the special meeting of Goose Creek CISD Board of Trustees to order on December 16, 2024 at 6 p.m. Mr. Campisi, was the meeting properly posted?
Yes, it was.
And do we have a quorum?
We have a quorum.
Would you please stand and join us for the prayer by Ms. Guy and the pledges by Mr. Campisi?
Lord, we thank you for our many blessings. Thank you for getting everyone here safely tonight, and please guide us in decision making so we're making decisions in the best interest of our students and community. May all we do be done to honor you. I ask this in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. If you would, join me in the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by the pledge, the Texas State Pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible.
Thank you both and everyone else. We will move to number 2 on our agenda, and that is, I have to get my little speech up, please. Give me a second. That is our citizens' participation information. Citizen participation is a time that the board will hear public concerns or public comments from those who have properly signed up to address the board. The board shall permit public comments regardless of whether the topic is an agenda item posted with notice of the meeting. At all other board member meetings, public comments shall be limited to open session items on the agenda posted with notice of the meeting. Each speaker is reminded that he or she is limited in his or her presentation to the maximum of 3 minutes. And Mr. Campisi will be our timekeeper, and that he or she respect confidentiality, concerns, and refrain from attacking the personal character of any individual student, staff member, or board member in addressing the concerns or comments. Pursuant to state law and board policy, B, legal, the board cannot consider or take action on concerns at this meeting unless they pertain to an item on the posted agenda for this meeting. Any deliberation or decisions on an item that is not posted for consideration at this meeting shall be limited to a proposal to be placed place the subject on the agenda of future meetings. Okay. We will start with our first speaker tonight is Ginger McKay, community member and resident.
Ms. McKay, you may begin when you're ready. The clock will start when you begin. I will let you know when you have 1 minute remaining and stop you at 3 minutes.
Thanks. Good evening, board members and Dr. O'Brien. I would expect that most of you would not know that I am a Lamar Lion. But I am not a Lamar Lion in the same way as the others who have spoken last week who are maybe speaking today. I was selected to be the campus principal in 1995 for Lamar Elementary by the outgoing principal Barbara Wilson, who was being moved to Stephen F. Austin at the time to lead the rebuilding of that school. I was given the great honor to be the leader of the rebuilding of Lamar Elementary School that opened in 1996. Meeting with the architects, picking out paint colors, facilitating relationships with the contractors, watching the many, many large oak trees being bulldozed down were just a few of the things. And in fact, I went to look it up. I still have my worksheet that I saved on my computer that has every single piece of equipment and furniture chosen for each room and every area of that building. And when printed out, covered the entire wall in my office. At one point, the budget was even a little bit over, and we were told that we were not going to get to have landscaping. So the landscaping was going to get cut. But what is a school without trees and shrubbery? So we punted. And we came back with a fundraising event where people were allowed to donate funds towards a tree or a shrub. So every tree and shrub on that campus was donated by someone in this community that was connected to Lamar Elementary, which stretches back to 1930. The other piece of the rebuilding was the difficult side with the community. Just as individuals have voiced their concern last week, In 1995, the Lamar alumni, which were 65 years strong, and they were not thrilled about the rebuild. It was close to home for me, though, because every time I went home, my husband would ask me about why we were rebuilding it, because he was an original Lamar cowboy, because that's what they were at the time. And he shared his opposition a lot. It made me think. I even tried to get the front of the school, the old school, to have the contractor save it to try to have it embedded into the new building, but that got kicked because of the way the building had to be replaced and we weren't going to be able to take it on. So my point is this. Being a Lamar cowboy or even a Lamar lion in any capacity runs very deeply through our veins. However, just in 1995, change is constant. While we want to keep things the same, we love it when we can make them stay the same. It unfortunately comes anyway. Our present is not what it was in 1930. It's not what it was in 1996 when we opened the new building, and it's not what it's been for the last 25 years. So with that being said, the decision rests with you about how to plan for the present and the beyond. You have an important role as a part of this board. Sometimes the decisions are easy and sometimes they're extremely difficult. This is one of those difficult times. As a board, please deliberate all the options and make a decision that will continue a promising path that moves us forward and through the progress of change. Thank you.
Thank you. Please note that Mr. Renteria has joined our meeting at 6:07. Thank you. Oh, okay. Thank you. Our next speaker is Stacy Romero.
Originally, I'm the reading TLC at Lamar, and originally I had prepared a speech, but I had a parent that was wanted to be here tonight, but she had to work, so she asked me to tell her son's story. Well, I've been at Lamar for 20 years, and 11 of the years I was a dyslexia specialist, and her son was one of my students. So I'm going to read you directly what she wrote. These are her words, not mine. Tell them, she said, please share Zay's story, and you can tell them I said for you to do so. Tell them Lamar saved my son in one day. Since kindergarten, I have been pleading every year with each new teacher to help my son in reading, explaining that he really, really struggles with it. And every year, instead of reports on him, how they were trying to help him, I only got reports of him having episodes of pure frustration. That they had made my son hate school because this 5 to 9-year-old little boy was desperately telling his teachers that he didn't understand anything, only to be called a liar and told he wasn't trying hard enough, that he just needed to actually try so he'd have anxiety attacks and leave the classroom, having rage fits and crying episodes every morning, begging me not to take him to school. And then we walked into Lamar, and they looked at his behavior reports, and they said, let's try something, and they immediately stuck him in a GT class setting to see how he would react to it. Then at the end of this very first day, his first day, they asked me if they could test him for dyslexia, which no other school had ever mentioned, and I had no clue what it was. But I agreed anything that could potentially help him, I was 1,000% behind. And results came back showing my son was not a bad kid, as in past schools had said, but he was just a little kid who didn't know how to properly express the enormous emotions he was experiencing. He was found to be severely dyslexic. He is now his scores have skyrocketed. He's a freshman at Lee High School. He plays football. He has a job and he has great friends. His teachers do nothing but praise him and tell me how good a job I did raising him, when in reality, if it wasn't for Lamar, I don't know where Zay would be. I will say, too, I want you to consider that when you're thinking about this decision, we all obviously know the position the district's in financially. These are my words. But I want you to think about the Zays of the world, and maybe Zay going to Lamar where there's lower capacity and there is lower class sizes, that maybe that was the difference that made Zay successful. And not all decisions can be made when we're looking at these kids in Lamar's population. We need to look at the whole picture not just one part of it.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Katrina Miracle.
Good evening. I would like you to reflect for a moment about the most important financial decisions you have made in your life. For me, that would be buying my home. How long did it take you to make that decision? Weeks? Months? Buying a home involves a lot of factors, such as location, cost, interest rates, all of which require research, not to mention the financing process, and many more factors that for the sake of time we will not go into. Now, let's discuss how long it took GC 2035 to reach a consensus that Lamar Elementary be recommended for campus repurposing. According to Ms. Douglas, a GC 2035 committee member, 6 hours. That's right, 6 hours to come to a consensus to close an elementary school. Personally, it takes me longer than 6 hours to make a purchase in excess of $100, much less make such an immense financial decision like closing or repurposing a school that impacts so many. GCC ISD core value number 4, creating a culture of mutual respect, dignity, and transparency to build trust with each other and those we serve. Transparency? Where was the transparency with the staff and the parents of Lamar? Lamar staff had to receive the news from outside sources. How does that create a culture of mutual respect? I know there were notifications sent and giant news and news of the week, but not in one place on any of those announcements did it state the repurposing, consolidating, or the closure of a school. It stated the long-range facilities plan is a type of planning that ensures our facilities can accommodate growth, changing legal specifications, or evolving technologies over time. Once the Lamar staff began asking questions, then there was a meeting scheduled to inform the staff, 14 days after the consensus was made. This is transparency. Now to discuss the future of Lamar educators. Human Resources offered options for Lamar teachers. They can either choose to move to Asheville Smith or Carver, both of which are F schools. The irony is striking. We are rewarding high-performance teachers and students from Lamar by transitioning them to schools with lower performance ratings. The third option presented is to get on the transfer list, which requires an interview process. In this scenario, a principal chooses not to hire the teacher. HR will place them wherever they choose. This process does not seem very respectable, considering the hard work and dedication of Lamar teachers. In closing, I ask that you take all this information into consideration before making your decision. Considering the long-range facilities plan is a 10-year plan, perhaps more time should be spent analyzing all of the data before making the decision to close a school, undoubtedly more than 6 hours. Thank you.
Thank you. I will try my best not to butcher this name. I'm sorry. In Ariella Yanaza. Am I close? What'd you say? No? Say it for me, though, please.
Aurelia.
Huh?
Aurelia Isnaga.
Okay. I was close.
It's okay. I get it a lot. Good morning, members of the Board of Trustees and Dr. O'Brien. We are not here to try to change your decision. It's clear that that decision was made months ago and stated by the administration. I want to begin by acknowledging that our emotions ran high during last Monday's meeting. That was not our intention. However, I would ask you how you would feel if your family and home were being attacked. And because Lamar is our home and our family. Unfortunately, this is how we feel. We do not feel supported or heard. This is truly a great sense of loss for Lamar. What saddens us the most is that Lamar is now being perceived as rude and disrespectful for our emotions that night. That is not us, and most is not Lamar. Lamar Elementary embodies a culture and climate that is safe, respectful, and caring, a place where family, staff, and students take pride in being part of the Lamar family. I assure you that in no time did we mean to come across as disrespectful to any of you. However, what about the emotions that was shown by the committee? A committee that stated leaving out their emotions and having empathy for Lamar. But when the vote was in their favor, committee members were seen dancing and laughing, gloating. Where was this empathy and respect for Lamar then? The Board of Trustees made it a point to acknowledge the committee by patting their backs for their hard work and the countless hours, as we all should thank them, and we do. But I would like to take this time to acknowledge the staff of Lamar for the countless years and hours they have given to the district, for all the hours worked beyond the contracted hours, for always, and I mean always, going above and beyond to make Lamar a place of excellence. So I say to you, to the Lamar family, and as we always say to our students every morning, in case that no one has told you, we here at Lamar, we love you very much and we appreciate you. As you prepare to vote on the plan tonight, I plead with you to reflect on whether it truly serves the best interests of our students. While I understand that districts needs to address budgetary concerns, this proposal centered in logistics fails to prioritize our students' educational and emotional needs. It overlooks the legacy of excellence and community that Lamar has built over the years. Repurposing Lamar is not in the best interest of our district, especially for our students. Under this plan, 500 will be reassigned to Asheville, Smith, and Carver. These schools, while striving for improvement, face academic challenges and remain focused campuses. Adding more students will only add to those challenges. This is not a strategy that ensures the success of our children, neither those who currently attend Lamar nor those at the receiving schools. I respect your role as decision makers elected to serve in the best interests of our students, our staff, and our families. In closing, it has been stated that this plan will save the district $2.5 million, but tonight I simply ask this question. What price do you put on integrity, loyalty, commitment, dedication, and our students' overall well-being? Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Mr. Robert B. Martin, Jr.
Good evening, Board. It's an honor to be speaking before you tonight on such a bad topic. My name is Robert B. Martin, Jr. I went to Lamar decades ago. I currently reside less than a block away from Lamar. My investment properties are all located within walking distance of Lamar.
Mr. Martin, please speak into your microphone.
I did not receive any notice whatsoever as an entrepreneur, as a businessman, or as a resident that Lamar was being repurposed. Now, I know you guys are all very smart, but there's one thing I think you guys have overlooked. That's the property value. Whenever you take away an elementary school, the zoning goes down. That means people don't want to buy your house. That means people don't want to rent your rentals, especially if it's families. That's a problem. And I think it's something that you guys never really considered because the community was never asked. Nobody came and knocked on my door. Why? You guys are supposed to be taking care of the community. That's what you have pledged to do. So I'm urging you guys to vote no, or at least table this until you've given Mr. Renteria the ability to go and speak to the business owners, speak to the people that actually live there like myself, and you hear our concerns. It is not fair and it is not right. You're messing with my personal investments. Now, in addition, it is a proven fact, and there's been plenty of surveys, that when you take a school away, the community becomes unsafe. So what you've unintentionally done is said to community members like myself, we don't care about your safety. Now, I know that's not your intention. I know that is not what you meant to do, but that exactly is how it comes off to me and to the other members of the community that I've spoken to. Again, we were given no notice. So, for a fact, a neighborhood elementary school makes the community safer, period. Now, I'm asking you again to vote no or to table this, But for sake of time, I'm going to bring up this last point. Lamar has been around for decades. Decades. I'm old, I know. This has never come up before. The only time it's come up is because if there's a new charter school 2 blocks away, Bob Hope, how many students were pilfered from Lamar that are now going to Bob Hope? Has that question been answered? Because all you got to do is ask the registrar, and they'll tell you how many transcripts they've sent over there. Is that the reason why that the student count is low? This school does not need to be repurposed. It needs to stay as Lamar Elementary, the greatest little elementary school in the world, period. It does not need to be repurposed. So I beg you, please, vote no or table it and speak to the community and give us the proper time. Because that's what you're there to do, right? Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it, and thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Our next speaker is Lucero Guzman.
Wait just a moment. Ms. Guzman advises she's going to speak in Spanish, and she's giving us an English copy of it. Ms. Guzman, you can proceed.
Buenas tardes, mi nombre es Lucero Guzmán. Soy madre de 2 hijas, una de ellas estudiante en la mar. Estoy aquí porque sé que no solo hablo por mí, sino por muchas familias que sienten lo mismo. Hoy me presento frente a mis hijas y frente a la comunidad que nos conoce y sabe el carácter y valores que defendemos. En la reunión pasada, padres hablaron de cómo la escuela brindó apoyo y paz en momentos de violencia. Maestros destacaron las relaciones profundas que han formado entre estudiantes y la comunidad. Padres de niños con autismo expresaron su temor por el impacto que el cierre tendría en la estabilidad de los que sus hijos necesitan. Ver a estos padres llorar me conmovió profundamente, no solo porque estas historias representen solo la parte emocional, sino porque reflejan la realidad de quienes sienten el peso de estas decisiones en sus vidas. Me dolió aún más escuchar después que se descalificaran estos sentimientos, como si no tuvieran lugar en estas discusiones. Les pregunto, ¿cómo podemos ignorar el impacto humano cuando la educación, en su esencia, es sobre personas? Pretender que estas historias no importan es olvidarnos de por qué estamos aquí. Hoy no me verán llorar aquí, no porque no me afecte lo que está ocurriendo, sino porque quiero que mis palabras sean tomadas en serio. No llorar no significa que no sienta profundamente la gravedad de lo que estamos enfrentando, sino que quiero que mis comentarios no sean descartados bajo la etiqueta de emocionales. Sin embargo, las emociones y las historias que compartimos aquí son reales y representan lo que está en juego para nuestros hijos y nuestra comunidad. En la reunión pasada, los miembros del comité mencionaron que tomaron esta decisión basándose en datos disponibles, lo cual es entendible y se agradece, porque refleja un esfuerzo por ser objetivos. Sin embargo, esta decisión no tiene el enfoque correcto que se omitió en considerar lo que no está en las cifras, el impacto humano. También escuché que si se hubiera elegido otra escuela por cerrar, seguramente serían los padres de esa escuela quienes estarían aquí. ¿No creen ustedes que esto es una señal clara de que esa no es una solución que la ciudadanía apoyará? La parte emocional, lejos de ser un problema, es lo que mueve a los votantes, y al ignorarla están abriendo la posibilidad de que muchas personas rechacen futuras propuestas en las urnas. No solo es cuestión de números, sino también cómo esas cifras afectan la vida de nuestras familias y nuestra comunidad. Hoy hablo en español porque el 77.8% de los estudiantes de la mar provienen de hogares donde se habla español. Muchas familias hispanas del distrito enfrentan barreras idiomáticas que dificultan su participación, pero eso no significa que no nos importe. Estoy aquí para asegurarme de que nuestras voces sean escuchadas. El domingo, antes de la reunión pasada, recorrí con mi hija 2 cuadras bajo la lluvia y recolectamos firmas de 30 familias que desconocían la propuesta de cierre y estaban en desacuerdo de lo que imaginan ahora lo que podríamos lograr con más tiempo y trabajando en algo positivo. Nuestra cultura hispana nos une para proteger lo que amamos, y esa misma fuerza puede fortalecer al distrito si sus decisiones combinan emoción, creatividad y viabilidad financiera. Estoy convencida de que si esta decisión se sometiera a voto popular, no tendría apoyo. Las familias desean soluciones que prioricen el bienestar de los niños y la estabilidad de nuestra comunidad.
Time has expired. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker for this evening is Aleida Suarez. Aleida.
Good afternoon. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak once again today. We understand the need to make changes, but there are several unused buildings in the area that could serve as a better fit for the repurposing rather than disrupting an elementary school that has been a heart of this community for over 60 years. By exploring these alternative buildings, we could preserve the stability of the school and the sense of security that it provides to our younger students and their families. We are not asking you to halt the changes, but we do request more time and more transparency in this process. We believe that with more time and collaboration, we can find a way to meet the district's need without sacrificing the stability of this school for our children and teachers. We want to work together to find the best solution, and that requires open dialogue and community input. Many parents of this community rely on the school to provide not only education, but also a safe environment for their children while they work long hours. If the school is repurposed and the changes are not well thought out, it could force families to find other schooling options, potentially impacting their children's education and their family's stability. For many, this school is irreplaceable. Our neighborhood has been centered around families with young children. If older high school students are brought into the school, this could change the dynamic of the entire area. Parents may become concerned about their children being exposed to behaviors they aren't ready for, and there may be perceptions that the area is less safe or family friendly. I urge the board to consider a more gradual approach to these changes and seek more input from the families and teachers who will be directly impacted. Perhaps we can explore alternative solutions, such as creating separate programs for high school students or finding ways to support pregnant teens in different settings. This will allow us to keep the integrity of our elementary school intact while still meeting the needs of our community. In conclusion, repurposing the school has potential to create a necessary disruption for our teachers, students, and the entire community. We need to protect the stability of the school, especially for families who rely on it every day. I ask the board to reconsider these changes and to prioritize the needs of the children, the teachers, and families who have trusted this school as a cornerstone of our community. Our goal is to ensure that any changes to our school are made with careful consideration of all factors involved, especially the impact of the students, the teachers, and the families who rely on us. We ask the board to reconsider the timeline, provide more opportunities for the parents and teacher involvement, and explore other alternatives to repurposing the school, such as utilizing other buildings in the area. I know that together we can find a solution that will benefit everyone.
Thank you. Our next speaker tonight is Gonzalo Espinoza.
Alrighty. So last week I came here and I spoke up as a coach, right? So last week I spoke about the lack of transparency and communications regarding the closures. Since then, I was informed the district has started sending physical letters and notices to the staff. Why wasn't this done from the start? Why did it take for the public backlash for the district to communicate properly? This is not leadership, in my opinion. What this is damage control. But the damage has already been done. Teachers and parents, as you can see, they feel lied to and deceived. And while they are the ones that are affected right now, this is a warning for everybody in the district, teachers and parents of other campuses, that given the district's history of lack of transparency and consideration, one day this might be you. You might be sitting here asking the board for the same things. Hopefully you have more than 5 minutes to ask questions. That's how long the Lamar staff had to ask the superintendent questions when he paid them a visit to discuss the matter. Also, since last week, multiple members of the district committees reached out to me and clarified that they never recommended a closure. Instead, they were given a binder by administration that provided data solely to support that consolidation, find it, fit in the narrative, but were never given other options to explore, like standalone rezoning. Whenever one of the members asked if rezoning alone could solve the issue, the comment was dismissed and reiterated that consolidation was the top priority because the district had data to back it up. But if rezoning is happening anyways, with or without this closure, why wasn't this considered to avoid the closure from the first place? Right? Why do we have to shut down a school now? Committee members also revealed that they were given plenty of data, but not critical details that matter in a huge decision like this, like the fact that the district has no long-term financial strategy to sustain these changes, as they made it also known in the last board meeting for the lady that presented their case. However, how can you make a decision this far-reaching financially with implications without knowing where the money will come from? I mean, I can't even buy a piece of some shoes right now without consulting my wife. How can you do that? One member told me the closure voted passed by a slight margin, and with full information, including the lack of funds, the outcome could have been different. It is clear the district's agenda is driving this decision, but not the best interest of the students, families, or teachers. I asked the board this: if even one of these committee members feels misled, how can the public here trust this process? How can you believe this is the right decision when the process has been rushed, biased, and lacking transparency? Thank you. Also, I have here from the GCCISD website a portrait of a leader. How ironic is this? Their 5 top points are: leads with integrity, makes strategic decisions, builds relationship capacities, and collaborates with others, and communicates effectively. How ironic. Straight from the district's website. Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Terry Martino.
Good evening, and bear with me. I have a couple of questions to ask the board. Would you be okay sending your child to a focus school known by TEA as an F school, rated campus? Would you be okay if you were a teacher being forced to go to a focus campus known as an F-rated campus where TEA, Region 4, and district admin were on your campus and out of your classrooms? Wouldn't it make more sense to move one of the other schools to better help those teachers who have or might be struggling? We have been told by many visitors that Lamar is one of the best schools they have ever been to. We work tirelessly to improve our students' academics. Look at our latest ratings. Have you looked at those? Did you know Lamar had a low turnover rate compared to Asheville, who thought they were going to be repurposed last year? Have you considered that Lamar should have 2 or 3 more years to give teachers and students ample time to decide what the next step would be, not slapped in the face after other people knowing before us of the 2035 plan? I have a parent who worked very hard to get $2,500 deposit so she could be close enough for her children to walk to and from school. This just happened last month. Had she known this, do you think she would have moved there? No, she wouldn't have. Was Lamar staff blindsided? To the Lamar family and staff, we were. My last question to the board is...
1 minute.
I better get my glasses on. Please vote no to repurpose of the highest rated school on the south side, and that we are. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speakers are Christine McDowell and Arya McDowell.
Hi, my name is Chrissy, and I'm a Lamar Lion. I want to say how much we love this school and how much they all have helped and protected my daughter, because they all love her and she loves them. I don't understand how you're going to close an AB school and leave open an F school, and you want to send our children there. They will not be getting the same education or attention that they obviously deserve. And that is not fair to these children. You cannot convince me that anyone from Asheville Smith would be here to fight for their closing of their school. It's a failing school and has been for a long time. It definitely isn't getting any better, especially if you add more students. In fact, if Asheville parents even knew that this was going on, they may be up here fighting right beside us so that their children can have a chance at a better education than the one they're getting right now. They certainly cannot keep staff, and it's a revolving door, and that in itself is sad. Something needs to be done with that school, and it isn't keeping it open. All I heard at the last meeting was Lamar was pig due to being the best moneymaker, and that is wrong. I feel people are putting themselves and their paychecks before our children and their well-being. I hope you can find it in your hearts to make the right decision that's best for our children and what we, Lamar Lion parents and staff, are begging you to do. This is the best school and experience I've had as a parent, as I have older children that are 28 and 27 who also went here the whole time, and they went to San Jacinto. We are Lamar Lions and always will be. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Alia, and I am a Lamar Lion. I'm here today for
1 minute.
to fight for my school. I don't want it to close. I love it there, and I feel safe there. Please don't take away the people and school. I love make the right choice tonight. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of the board, we'd like to acknowledge and thank every member of the public that came out and gave input tonight. And thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come and speak with us. We really appreciate each of you. Thank you. Now, once the board, as we move now, Dr. O'Brien, we will move to number 3 on our agenda, discussion items. And at this point, it would be designated staff who will be speaking, and let's move forward as you may.
Thank you, Madam President. Number 3A is Superintendent's Report. We have the board recommendation to the board to repurpose Lamar Elementary. It will be presented by Facilities and Community Engagement. It's on.
Good evening, President Tens, Brat Tens, board members, Dr. O'Brien. We are here today to discuss the recommendation to the board to consider consolidation and repurpose of Lamar Elementary. I have with me, I'm Kendall David, Executive Director of Community Engagement.
I'm Brenda Garcia, the Director of Facilities Planning and Construction.
And Matt Bollinger, Assistant Superintendent of HR.
So let's talk about why we as a district have considered consolidation to begin with. We know that this is a very difficult process that falls on our community, on our district, on our students. So why are we considering a consolidation of an elementary school in our district? The first is declining student population. This was directly highlighted by the 2024 demographic study. It highlights underutilization of facilities on the south side of Goose Creek. We have also been called to be very efficient with tax dollars. So whenever we talk about maximizing district resources, a campus consolidation at the levels that many of our elementary schools are sitting at capacity-wise on the south side is not maximizing per pupil spending. And ultimately, a school consolidation would generate an annual cost savings of almost $2.5 million. In addition to that, we are undergoing a district comprehensive rezoning plan. Ultimately, we will be looking at about 4,000 to 5,000 students that are impacted by rezoning as a whole. That's about 18% of our student population. Ultimately, the goal of rezoning is we have campuses on the north side of our district that are sitting at over capacity. And again, campuses on the south side of our district that are sitting under capacity. So it directly aligns with the rezoning efforts that are forthcoming this school year. In addition to that, we do have the opportunity to expand services that Peter E. Highland offers, as well as child care services in our district. And also, it is imperative that we move Point out of the old San Jacinto. That building is very inefficient and very costly to maintain and keep students in that facility. And then last, just looking at state challenges, it's no secret that lack of funding has really forced a statewide trend of leveraging all different types of budget reduction measures. School consolidation is being considered by many districts, which we'll talk about here in a minute, as a budget reduction strategy. So let's talk about elementary campus capacities. This is a very short glimpse of campuses across the district. If you notice, campuses in red are over capacity and will continue to increase over capacity over the next 10 years. The campuses in red for the most part are campuses on the north side of the district. Campuses in yellow are typically your central campuses. Those are sitting anywhere between 80 and 90% and are almost at capacity. If you look, many of these campuses increase drastically over the next 10 years. I'd like to point out Victoria Walker, Banuelos, a consistent increase of capacity at those schools on the north side. On the contrary, you also have schools on the south side, specifically Asheville Smith and Lamar Elementary, that are currently sitting at 58 and 60% capacity. Those capacity numbers remain stagnant over the next 10 years, indicating that we do not plan on seeing much growth in those areas.
Okay, I want to talk just on the staffing side and the budget reduction side. So at the close of last year, the district anticipated a $12 million deficit for this school year, 24-25 school year. Ms. Clark and her business team will, of course, leads that initiative, and they'll do that again this early spring. Since then, additional expenses have arisen, including increased insurance costs, also lower tax rate. And so those are just two pieces that have increased the deficit. This year's budget reduction will be significant. We know that, and we have already implemented numerous cuts over the past 2 years. You've been involved in those cuts, particularly in staffing. And so the consolidation of Lamar Elementary, or any elementary for that matter, is expected to save the district approximately $2.4 million. And we'll talk about other districts in the state of Texas who are facing similar challenges. But this gives a breakdown because the question was asked, where are those cost savings? And it's really two pieces. One is staffing, and then the second piece is taking the old San Jacinto offline. And so you can see it itemized for San Jacinto on the maintenance, repairs, and the utility cost. And Ms. Garcia can talk in depth if you have questions on that. For staffing, I think it's important to say that if we consolidate any elementary, individuals are not losing their job. They will have a job. What consolidation does, because we have several elementaries at 60%, as you just saw on the slide before, is if there are duplicate positions, we will find another position at another elementary school for those positions. For example, a principal, a counselor, a receptionist. positions that are not needed for duplicate roles. And so we would find vacancies, and we'll get into the transition process here in a minute. But we have identified over 40 positions for an elementary school, including Lamar, that would save $1.7 million. That's the projected cost, and then you can see the following savings with taking the old San Jacinto offline. And so the total cost is $2.4 million. You go to the next slide. Also, it's important to note that many districts across Texas are facing several challenges, including declining enrollment in certain areas of town, increased operational costs, and also the need to maximize resources due to reduced funding. We know that statewide that funding has been a huge challenge. We haven't received an increase since before COVID. Inflation has contributed to that. Also, there's been an increase in unfunded mandates. And so many districts, including Goose Creek, we're not immune to it, are having to make very difficult decisions that we do not want to make. And this is one of those decisions. You can see that almost 20 districts over the last 2 years have consolidated one or more campuses. Right now, I believe El Paso announced they're consolidating 10 campuses. Louisville ISD is consolidating 5. Right now, Goose Creek is looking at 1, and that may change in the future. But I know that again, this is a tough decision that many districts are in the same boat addressing this concern.
Okay, so let's talk about the campus consolidation and repurpose timeline. In March of last year, we had a budget reduction workshop where we considered as a Tier 2 budget reduction strategy a consolidation of one of our campuses. At that time, we felt like we didn't have enough information, and we wanted to make sure that we were doing our due diligence in making that decision. And so a demographic study was completed by June of 2024 and presented to the board and community. From the findings of the demographic study, it was very clear that there was a need to rezone, and there was definitely an option capacity-wise to consolidate a campus on the south side of Goose Creek. GC 2035 was formed in August and proceeded to have 5 meetings regarding facilities and long-range facility planning, as well as going into rezoning in the coming months. On October 29th, GC 2035 reached consensus that Lamar would be repurposed. Now, I will say that the district brought forth the option of consolidation. The committee was simply to consider both facilities that were being presented and charged with determining what would fit best for the repurposing. In addition, at the November board meeting, immediately following the October 29th meeting, we provided an update to the board and the next day to the Lamar community to inform them of the GC 2035 recommendation that would occur in December. Last Monday, the GC 2035 committee presented the long-range facility plan, and of course it did include the repurposing of Lamar Elementary.
Before you move on, Ms. David, I think it's important, the demographic study, you had it on the first slide with the 10-year snapshot, so most people would pick up that that's a 10-year picture of it.
Correct.
Who conducted the demographic study, and what basis did they have to conduct the study?
Absolutely. So it is a firm called PASA, and they are used by the majority of the districts in the state. The report is available online. It is a comprehensive report of 250, 300 pages, and it really analyzes planning units, upcoming planning units, birth rates, school trends. It's a very large study, and I will say that we have had a PASA study done in 2019, and just in looking at their projections, they are very accurate over the last 5 years, what they projected 5 years ago, where our campuses would be standing currently at this moment. So let's talk about GC 2035. Ms. Garcia is going to walk you guys through the data that was presented to this committee, but ultimately, just as a reminder, this committee was formed. It was a community-based committee. It consists of 117 original members from all over our community, parents, alumni, community business owners, teachers, students, administrators, And again, they were tasked to choose between two campuses to consider for repurposing. So Ms. Garcia is going to walk us through the intricacies of how that decision was made.
Sure. So when the committee compared the Lamar and the Smith campuses, they reviewed several factors. Some of the factors they reviewed were things like the facility condition assessments that we had done on various campuses. That includes the deficiencies that are at these campuses that were assessed. They also reviewed things like the site, the acreage, the traffic flow, and the different entrances at each campus. They also reviewed campus accessibility and classroom use, and then the demographic study information that Kendall mentioned as well. When looking at Lamar, the major thing that that stood out was that there was a lot more outdoor space, 2.8 acres of usable outdoor space at Asheville Smith in comparison to about 1.5 acres at Lamar Elementary. Additionally, the amount of deficiencies, the cost estimation to do that work was quite a bit higher by over $5 million at the Lamar campus versus the Asheville Smith campus, including a need to review or to renovate the internal stairwell at Smith that would be very comprehensive. Additionally, there were more priority ones at the Lamar campus. I mentioned this because we really wanted to focus on if there was going to be an elementary campus that would serve 800 students, we wanted it to be the campus that was in the best shape. Additionally, just the layout of the Lamar campus with minimal modifications that would be needed at the entrances, in particular to accessible restrooms for the program that could become the child care facility, and those restrooms already being available on the first floor with easy access for drop-off for those parents as well. So ultimately, the decision was made based on the facility that was viewed as the best suited to be able to support the district's repurposing needs.
Okay, in the event that this decision is approved by the board, we do want to present a tentative transition plan. If rezoning is approved, which I think that's coming down here in about 2 months, the majority of Lamar students would be rezoned to Carver Elementary, and a smaller portion would be rezoned to Asheville Smith. And so we want to make sure that the transition plan, it's a very stressful process, and so we want it to be as organized and as clear as possible. I know over the last 2 years we've had to reduce positions, and so there's been opportunities to have to reassign or have to go through a process to make sure that we're reducing positions, and several individuals have moved from one campus to another. We don't like doing that, but of course, if that's needed, then we want to make sure that we have a clear process in place. And so pending board approval, the plan is to send out a survey to the teachers of Lamar beginning on January 6th, where they can state their preferences, whether it be a certain school such as Carver or Smith, or if they prefer to be on the transfer list. And then that survey will be open for about 3 weeks, and then after that, administrative guidelines will be followed in the reassigning process. Teachers will not interview for Carver or Asheville Smith. If they choose the transfer list, then principals will have the opportunity to select them. Our plan is to create a special list for the school that's consolidated and provide that to principals ahead of the transfer list so that they would have priority, so principals would have that list to fill their vacancies at that time. We typically do staffing in March. Every year we do staffing in March. We do elementary and then secondary. And so right after spring break, our plan is to start the reassignment process as soon as possible once we have those numbers. Of course, this is also pending on the rezoning approval, so we know where staff positions are allocated. And so our plan is to notify as soon as possible so that staff will know what their reassignment will be. Our transfer window every year opens April 1st, so I wanted to put that on here district-wide. And then if Lamar teachers prefer the transfer list, and if they happen not to be selected, then we would make sure that we would find a reassignment, and we'd work with that teacher one-on-one to see what vacancies are available to try to meet their needs while also meeting the needs of the staff. It's important, this bolded piece right here, all staff members will retain a job, and that's really what we're pushing for. We are concerned down the road about financial exigency, and we want to make sure that we are making good decisions now that will sustain the district long term. And so, so this is the transition plan that we would put in place.
Okay, so in summary, I hope today we've communicated that ultimately this is a very difficult decision. It's a difficult process for us as administrators to go through. Dr. O'Brien, the GC 2035 committee, we are not in a position where this is favorable. We know that this is going to be very, very difficult for the community should it be approved. But ultimately, we want you as a board to know that GC 2035 carefully evaluated campuses. They were looking at this from a lens of what is the best suited campus for repurposing. Ultimately, we tried to create an environment where it was an unbiased approach to assess facilities and their alignment with the district needs for repurpose. Again, this is a statewide challenge. Goose Creek is not alone. Many other districts have already made the decision to consolidate schools. Many other districts are going to see school consolidations come up on their board agendas in the future as a budget reduction strategy. We want to make sure we say that job security for staff is very important to us, and that no staff members will lose their job in this process, and HR is committed to ensuring that teachers of the consolidated campus are met in a situation where their skills are best utilized to support our kids. Ultimately, this is a strategic budget reduction item. Repurposing Lamar is a cost-saving measure that we have been looking at since budget workshop of last year. And operating schools at 60% is not efficient. Is a not efficient way to spend tax dollars. And at this current time, as we go through a comprehensive rezoning plan, this effort ultimately is part of a very broad rezoning initiative in our district. And so this is not something that just Lamar will go through when it comes to transferring students to different campuses. This is something that will come up for many, many of our families. Are there any questions?
Yeah, I have some questions. So I just want to, and not really, I don't know. Anyway, I just want clarification, I guess. So I heard you say that other students in the district will need to transfer campuses, which also means other teachers in the district will need to transfer campuses. Also, I've seen that there's talk about students who are moving to different campuses maybe fitting into the teachers' classrooms that are already there. So in my head, my thought is that if we're moving teachers also to these new campuses, we shouldn't expect these huge class sizes. So their students should still be getting the attention that they're currently receiving at their current school.
Yeah, our staffing ratio will not change, so it'll be the same. It'll be the same district-wide.
Say that on the same of district-wide. With teacher-student ratio, that was what I'm looking at the numbers, because some of our north side have a little bit larger classes. So we don't want that trend to happen. If we're going to merge something, we want to look at our ratio and being beneficial to our students and our teachers as well. So I'm with Tiffany on that one. It wasn't real clear for me.
I'll tell you that one of the main reasons that we are looking at rezoning is because we do have campuses that are over capacity. And so it's very challenging when we have campuses that that area continues to grow and we have more students enroll in those schools. We're at a point where we're maxed at a lot of our campuses, and that's ultimately why we are looking at a comprehensive rezone for all of our schools to create that equity across the district.
And I'll say that we are staffed at the same ratio district-wide. So if, for example, Pumphrey is at high capacity, that they will get an additional teacher if they cross that formula to add another teacher. But as far as space goes, that's the challenge. Yeah.
So I got a question. How much is it going to cost to modify Lamar if it passes? We were never given any numbers.
We're still reviewing based on your decision, those programs that will be put into the campus. And so just in researching it, minimal modifications would have to be done. We don't have an estimate for you today, but we'll plan on getting that to you.
That would reduce the number of savings and costs that the 2.4 million that you were
that is
projecting.
correct. But please keep in mind that 2.4 is per year over at least the next 5 years. And so there's no way that it would be anywhere close to that.
A couple of questions. One is, if we do move students from Lamar to Smith and Carver, instead of them sitting at 60%, about where will they lie capacity-wise?
Let me pull that for you. They will be sitting, depending on which rezoning option is selected, they will be sitting anywhere between about 87 and 93% at those campuses.
So if we move 88 kids from Lamar to Smith, we're going to move 4 teachers too, with the ratio.
Yes, whenever we do staffing, once we know where the students are seated, basically, or assigned, projected, then that'll tell us how many teachers we need each school and how many paraprofessionals and so on.
Since you have the mic, my last question for now is, you mentioned administrative guidelines will be followed when reassigning. Can you elaborate on that just a tiny bit? Are we talking staffing ratios or what else?
Yes, so what I meant by that was, on the administrative guidelines, it's based off seniority per grade level. Okay. And so we'd still follow that process, but we'd also look at that survey result to see what teachers prefer, and then we'll try to, as best as we can, honor that request. Okay. And so I think it's going to be very much of a customized reassignment, a little bit different than what we've done in the past, where once we have a vacancy, we move that teacher immediately. Our hope, I don't know if we can, I don't think we'll be able to meet everyone's needs or get their first preference, but our goal is to maximize that as much as possible.
Okay, thank you.
But, excuse me.
So, for example, there's 38 teachers at Lamar. There's 300 vacancies annually across the district. So, with the number of vacancies we will have due to retirement and people who move and things of that nature, 10% of what we're talking about, a 10% move into 100% vacancy going forward with those that opt not to go to Lamar, opt not to go to Carver or Asheville.
But there is the chance that all teachers don't have to go to the Asheville. They can go, if they see a position somewhere else, they can go there.
So in the preference survey,
right,
they can pick a reassignment to Carver or to Asheville Smith as their first and second choice, or they can select being on the transfer list. And then there's also going to be a place where they can add comments. So if they wanted to drill a little bit deeper, they can do that as well. So if I'm a teacher who selects the transfer list,
right,
then I'm saying that I want to be put out there, and then we'll create a special list just for Lamar teachers and provide that to principals. So if I'm over at Harlem Elementary and I have a 5th grade vacancy, I can see the teachers that are eligible for that from that Lamar list and talk to those teachers.
How many of these?
For example, Mr. Sampson, if a teacher teaches 4th grade ELR and they only want to teach 4th grade, and Carver and Asheville do not have that vacancy, that's when they would opt for the transfer to another campus across our district that might have a 4th grade English spot open.
What is the possibility of the kids from Lamar going to Asheville or whatever school, Carver, that they can possibly get the same teacher that they have or had at Lamar if they moved to that school? That way they have, that.
So the students would not be moving in the same instructional years. So they would be starting their next grade level with a new teacher regardless. So this will take place at, the next calendar or instructional year.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that they get a new teacher regardless.
So it's not one-for-one.
Right. Well, I mean, if I go from 3rd grade to 4th grade, I'm going to have a new teacher that next year. But maybe the question is, will I have a Lamar, Lamar teacher as my teacher? And I don't know how complicated that would be. That's something we can look at.
Yeah.
I will tell you one thing to note, again, with the comprehensive rezone and looking at the best rezone options, again, to improve efficiency across the district. Many of the Lamar students will be zoned or could be zoned to Carver. In addition to that, many students from Carver who may be closer to Travis Elementary, San Jacinto Elementary could be rezoned outside of Carver into one of those campuses. So it is very complex when you're looking at a comprehensive rezone and a shift. We have not done a comprehensive rezone of our district in over 10 years. And so we have a lot of pocket zones. We have a lot of zones that transportation is traveling quite some distance to transport students that aren't as efficient because that's the zoning that made sense at the time. And so much of the district will experience a change in their student population. Should rezoning be approved.
In keeping with that, Kendall, do you think that we'll lose some of our kids to Bob Hope School? And how many have we lost that brought our percentages down? I never got any numbers on that either.
I can't predict that. I can tell you in the demographic study it was presented that we have lost students to Bob Hope. Currently they are only servicing up into 3rd grade. I can get you the exact number that was presented by the demographer.
Dr. Bollinger, my question's for you. How many teachers currently are at Lamar that would have to go on the transfer list or go to other options?
I can't answer that yet because once we do rezoning, then we'll do staffing and what I mean. But
let me rephrase it. How many teachers at Lamar currently will be moved one way or another? How many current teachers do we have at Lamar?
If we consolidate?
No, currently, right now, how many teachers will be affected tomorrow?
38.
38?
But it depends on what the projected enrollment is for next year. If they lose 1 or 2 teachers, then we would reassign those teachers, or they would get on the transfer list. So we don't receive those projections yet until we rezone.
Right, so. But currently tonight, as we sit here, we have 38 teachers that would be affected by this. Projecting, just ballpark projecting, of those 38, how many will we be moving over to Carver and Smith? Okay. Best guess.
Yeah, so my best guess would be the vast majority of them would end up at Carver or Asheville Smith because that's where the students are going. There may be a chance where there may be 1 or 2 teachers that end up at a different school, but based off if all the students are moving to just 1 of 2 schools, then the staff will most likely follow. The numbers may not fall exactly right, so there may be 1 or 2 teachers who elect to be on the transfer list and end up elsewhere, but I would say the vast majority would fall into 1 of those 2 schools.
But we could expect tonight that the majority of those teachers could expect to go follow their students to those schools and bring their culture to Asheville and to Carver.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Outside of an exception where a teacher wants to stay in the same grade level and that's not available at one of those 2 campuses, then they could get on the transfer.
Right, and that's understood. I'm looking more at the availability portion of it. I want to change it over to just a little bit, and pardon my congestion. I got this here at the board, and I'm going to keep it here. Dr. Bollinger, we talk all the time about our teachers and our staff. I want to use the word employees instead, and I want to hear directly from you, and I want our community to hear that we are referring to employees when we say no one will lose their job if we consolidate this school, and it being in the best interest of our district. And to me, that means retaining every employee that's committed to serving our district in one way or another, whether it be a bus driver, custodian, receptionist, all the way up to the principal. I want to use the word employee. Are we retaining all of our employees?
Yes. And what I like to say is over the last 2 years, we've reduced over 200 positions, and we use the attrition model. So what that means is that we have vacancies in the district, and then we allow certain staff members to to get placed into that vacancy so that someone does not lose their job. Our main concern, and I feel like a lot of districts are talking about this, is what we don't want to do is get into a situation where we have to have a reduction in force where individuals do lose their jobs. And so by making some of these tough decisions, we're hoping over the last 2 years at least that we're able to continue to use the attrition model to make sure everyone stays gainfully employed. A lot of those reassignments are either welcomed or they're not too dramatic, but I'm not going to lie to you, some of them are. Depending on, a certain secretary in this building was moved to a campus because she was last in, first out. And so that happened. A year later, a vacancy opened up here at admin, and she was able to move back. So there is some transition, but the key is that we want to try to retain employment, and we've done that successfully over the last 2 years.
And the follow-up to that is it would be at comparable pay. They would not be moved to a lower paying position, correct?
Correct.
Thank you for clarifying.
For the most part, unless there's these niche or niche positions that are difficult to fill, and so they keep their pay for the year, and then we make adjustments. Now that's not true for any contracted employee. That they are placed into the same pay position. When we're talking about teachers, for the vast majority, we're able to find that same or similar position because there's many of them.
Thank you for clarifying.
So if the repurpose were to pass, Lamar would still remain an education facility. What is the likelihood of some of our current employees at Lamar staying at Lamar at the new education facility?
So,
is that a possibility?
I don't think we've gotten that far down the road. The example that I'm thinking of is like, let's say the custodial staff or the cafeteria workers. There's going to be a need there. But if, for example, Peter E. Highland moves over, they also have custodians. They also have cafeteria workers. So I think we're going to have to iron that out on what that would look like.
I will say that just in talking about this, the concerns that you're bringing up, we've also had those concerns. And so I've asked the question, how many vacancies do we have in the custodial department and, nutrition services? And there's absolutely vacancies that are consistently filling in those roles.
And if we're talking about adding a large population of students at any campus, you're probably going to need more custodial staff and more food service staff on the campus, right?
We have a ratio that we staff at for that. The issue is that our ratio is pretty broad, and so even with our smaller campuses, we've just kept the ratio the same. And so there will be an adjustment to that. But it'll be utilizing that staff more efficiently at that campus. And then back to your question, just in thinking about it, I mean, we'll resort to administrative guidelines, so it'll be based off seniority on who gets that position and who doesn't, if they want to go to another facility.
My next question, Ms. Garcia, is for you. Looking at it I promise I'm not on anything.
From a construction standpoint.
Construction standpoint. I am definitely under the weather. Looking at it solely from the construction standpoint, and you don't have numbers, and I understand that. You probably know our buildings more than anyone in the district. I've toured many of them with you. Do you feel that this is the best repurposing use of this building and that we would get years of use out of it given the direction that administration wants to take this? And I know it's kind of putting you in the hot seat, but this board's going to kind of come to you down the road and say, well, you thought this would be good, we could do it for so much money. I just kind of want to know from you, because you're the expert in this field, that this is the right direction to repurpose that school, or should we look at repurposing it into something different?
The short answer is yes. I'm very comfortable with this plan. And truly, we did a lot of work ahead of time in presenting the information to the committee. Internally, a review a facility and look at all of the different options. And because of the programs that need to be moved, that are suggested to be moved to this particular facility, the most important thing was really having 2 points of access for entry to separate the two groups. And in reality, it's two groups that are already currently at one campus, and so they would be relocating to a different one, and the facility would function very much in the same manner as having separate points of entrance of an entrance. Again, we talked a little bit about the repairs. There really would be minimal at this campus. It truly is the best suited for repurposing.
Okay, and along those lines, that would take point going to the old Peter Highland building. Is that correct?
Correct. That is correct.
Let's talk a little bit about Peter Highland then. And the same question, and I'll go ahead and ask Mr. Renteria's question too. How much remodeling will that take to put point in there?
Probably also very minimal, because the spaces that are needed by that campus are already there. If anything, some minor painting. They already have secured entrances, secured fencing. All of those things are already in place for that type of campus. And as a matter of fact, they'd have a little bit more elbow room at that campus, including something that they really appreciate being at the old San Jacinto facility is cafeteria space, eating space without being on top of each other. As y'all are aware, their old campus was very crowded. Their eating cafeteria was a portable, so now they'll have a little bit more breathing space. And that's really been one of the reasons why they've wanted to remain at the old San Jacinto. Additionally, it has a gym. That space was not available at their old facility, and so it's ready to serve day one for them.
And we would get years of useful life for point at that
yes,
facility?
Yes, absolutely, for both campuses, correct.
Okay, thank you.
You know, in keeping with this question, when you say minimal, 200,000, 500,000?
Probably closer for a Lamar repurpose, but Point is Peter Highland facility, it's move-in ready. It's already functioning.
No, I'm talking about Lamar itself. Are you saying how much? Give me a number. Just saying minimal, that ain't telling me.
Would you be looking at as partition pathways to section off the one side of the campus from the other side of the campus, for example? And I'm glad you brought this up, Mr. Martinez, to go back to you. Could a current employee at Lamar stay at Lamar under the repurposed plan? And the answer to that is yes, under several circumstances, custodian, cafeteria worker, other hourly employees possibly. But there is a shot, just so everyone will understand what the repurpose is, of a teaching faculty member too, because the repurpose is going to be 9th through 12th grade, in addition to 0 through 3 years old. So if there was a pre-K or a kindergarten teacher that wanted to go to a 0 through 3 teaching position, that's a possibility. That's not a promise from up here. I'm just saying there are considerations that are academic teacher pertaining to the needs there. If a 5th grade teacher was very confident in their language skills to teach a 9th grade class, that would be a possibility for them to. They may already be certified secondary. So those are chances that a person who was really determined to stay on the campus could, for academic reasons beyond the hourly employees.
Okay, Randy, thank you for interrupting me, but I need a number.
Back to your question, it is very difficult to provide you with a number. We need to review ways that we can renovate the facility in a flexible manner. Flexible could be the use of partition spaces, a roll-down gate. Those are different than making permanent changes to a facility, and so those things need to be reviewed, scoped out. I also need to speak with the campuses and the programs that need to move in and make sure that we design that space that's suitable to work for them.
And don't you think that before we make a big decision like this, those things should have been hashed out already so we would know the numbers?
I do want to answer that question. When we design facilities, a first step that we always take is doing a feasibility study. Is it possible? Will it work? And that's what was done for this facility.
Yeah, well, I'm just saying, we're projecting 2.4 million savings, but we're not projecting how much we're going to spend to modify that school. So it's not going to be the way we're projecting that it's going to be. The numbers are going to be different, and it's very expensive right now.
It will be very close. I'd also like to point out that that's a projected $2.5 million yearly. Yeah. So yes, we may have to make some very minor modifications to that campus, but that is a one-time cost.
Semantics, I just don't, I'm a construction guy myself, And in hearing y'all say it's minor, it's minimal, that's not true. I can tell you that's not true. Anytime you go build or
I can give you an example of something that I'm referencing when I'm saying minor. For example, there are toilet fixtures that are suited for an elementary school student, and so that would need to be changed. We do replacement of plumbing fixtures frequently within our district. That's considered a minor repair. So those are things that I'm trying to...
With those things, because we will look at our own construction department for many of those things as well that we could do, or would have to bring in a contractor for most of it.
We can review that together with our maintenance department as well to see if that's a possibility. It would also depend on their workforce availability, but we could look at purchasing that internally as well. So there's a lot of avenues that we can take. And I promise we will be as frugal as possible with this renovation.
I mean, I get it, and I understand what you're saying, but I mean, that's talk. But when you actually get down to work and remodifying the school and doing all this work, they're charging all kinds of money to do work these days. So I just don't buy that minimal stuff. And
well,
I know that there's going to be some...
give you a laundry list of ticket items, what things cost, like the pull-down gate. We could give you a cost.
That's what
I'm
saying, Randy. We should have had that already.
A portable building is $100,000 to move it, set it up, put an awning on it, hook it up with electrical and water. So, I mean, you could itemize every single expense, but we haven't gotten that far in the process as far as knowing whether it's going to be a large expense or a small expense. So we're using the term minimal to reflect that.
And that's my point. We didn't get no data to make a real good decision with what we're going to do tonight. We just didn't get the numbers. We didn't get the information.
Well, you got the number on the side of closing the old San Jacinto.
Yeah.
And the costs associated
and to
with
me,
savings
that's a
related
separate
to
issue. That was, an issue that we've had for, 2 or 3 years now? Maybe longer?
Since the new San Jacinto opened, correct.
Yeah, so, me personally, I think we should just sell the San Jacinto the way it is and let somebody else do what they got to do with it and make some more money off of that. But that's just my personal opinion.
We thank you for your comments.
I think just in response to that comment, a lot of the families here tonight have talked about, home value and educational facilities. And I think I would like to note when it comes to San Jacinto that community has expressed that building should not be turned into just anything. And so that's why it's being considered for a demolition and us having, a say for that community and what it turns into. The same as Lamar, should it be repurposed, will continue to be an educational facility.
Yeah, but Kendall, you're talking about apples and oranges because we have a new San Jacinto. That old San Jacinto is no longer going to be a part of our school district. They have something to compensate for. Now, these students are going to be dispersed throughout the school district. That's a real different thing.
I have a question, Kendall, or for you to kind of sort of like repurposing the buildings or properties for other district use, but also being mindful that our partnerships and with the communities, could you kind of express that when you shared with me? And as I had asked that question about the property and public use, meaning we could sell it to someone and they could put what they want there, which would may be an eyesore for the community. So could you kind of elaborate on that a little bit? I'm sorry to take this little time.
Absolutely.
But I want you to hear this too.
Absolutely. So when we first started looking at the demolition of Old San Jacinto, one of the biggest concerns from that community, because it lies in the middle of a neighborhood, was that if that facility was sold to, say, a storage building, now you're going to have a completely different landscape and use of a facility in the middle of a neighborhood. And so just like Lamar continuing to be an educational facility, we'd want to be very careful with how we utilize Old San Jacinto and what control we have over that building, simply because it is, again, in the middle of a neighborhood.
That's my neighborhood, and we have refineries all through our neighborhood there. Yep. I'm just saying that we can't control things that happen after we sell it. We're trying to control what we have right now, and we can't do that. So, my whole deal is in response to, Madam President's question is, hey, we're selling it to make the money to offer more to our students, not to control what's put in the neighborhood. So we that's not even to me, that's not even an argument there. I got another question. Is Lamar Elementary an A and B school or not? I want to clear the air with that because I've heard some discussion, that it is. I've heard some comments tonight that it is, but I've heard other comments that it's not. And I want to answer that. Maybe Randy can answer that.
I can answer it for you.
Okay.
We have not had A through F accountability since 2021. Is that correct, Ms. Jackson? So to use that term, the A through F, that has not been released for any scores over the past 3 instructional years. I will say I pulled data because I was curious myself that it is something that has come up across the community. I've pulled 3rd through 5th reading scores at Asheville, Carver, and Lamar, and 3rd through 5th math score at Asheville, Carver, and Lamar, and they are performing at relatively similar levels. Asheville Smith performed 62 approaches last instructional year, Carver at 66, and Lamar at 63 in approaches. That was for reading. For math, Asheville 46% approaches, Carver 53% approaches, Lamar 58% approaches. So they are performing at relatively similar levels, all 3 of those campuses.
And something that hadn't come up tonight is that all 3 campuses are within 1 mile of one another, which was not uncommon 30 years ago. Today, and that was because 80% of the population of Baytown was south of I-10 or even further south of central, what we call Central Baytown now. And today, 80% of the population is north of that centrist line. So the demographic study that was referred to this evening is reflective of that. I don't think anyone, architect or otherwise, would have recommended building 3 campuses within 1 mile of one another that would house that many students. Even with highly dense housing, it just wouldn't have been done that closely together.
That's correct, Randy. But here's a question. Well, if there's that many in the north, why can't we rezone and move them down some? Just this way.
That is absolutely what we are proposing.
Right.
And you'll see those zoning options.
Yes, I agree. I get it. But I'm saying without repurposing Lamar, just rezone and everybody move down.
And Mr. Renteria, I'm glad you asked because, we are, again, doing a very extensive rezoning.
Well, I have to ask, Kendall, this is my district, and you see the crowd back here. They're really concerned about it.
I completely agree, and I'm glad you asked.
Yeah.
And let me say this.
Yeah.
Again, you're going to see in the coming weeks that, yes, should the Lamar repurposing be approved, then we can release some of the rezoning options that we would propose to our community to provide feedback on. And again, they will push many students down towards the south side of the district. But what I will also say is there is a threshold when it comes to transporting students. You cannot take students, it is not recommended to take students past a certain point to transport to school.
Who recommended it?
Transportation, at some point it becomes more costly to transport students.
It's going to cost them money, and they have less money to move around. This is a poverty-stricken area we're talking about.
Transportation will be provided to them.
Some people don't even have cars in our district.
Transportation will be provided to students to go to schools.
Okay.
And I think the point is just for transportation, if you're transporting them over long distances, students are going to be sitting on that bus for over an hour one way, and we also don't want that to happen too. So when there's boundaries as far as how far you transport them, I think that's also a consideration.
I happened to talk to the director of transportation and ask that very question. What is our current route average? And it ranges between 25 minutes to 40 minutes is our current route. So a proposal to bring students from north of I-10 to south could leave them on the bus for an hour and a half each way every day. So that's just me checking and asking a question. That's not research. I just wanted to know what our current routes are and what they would be if we were to reroute or rezone students that would fill up these campuses without moving.
Anybody else have questions? I have more.
I think another piece of the puzzle that we need to look at is point. They're over in a building that we promised the community that we would no longer utilize when they passed a bond. And we got pushed into a corner because of, we hate to say it, unfunded state mandates with this vaping issue. And we had to increase capacity. That was the only option at the time. But I think we need to talk a little bit about how we're on borrowed time over there, whether we need to build a new building to house that program or pump a ton of money into sustaining a building we promised we wouldn't keep. And I think that's a piece of this puzzle we really need to look at as well. And this kind of alleviates that, at least for the foreseeable future. Am I seeing that correctly?
Yes, any savings that may be realized by this proposal would be lost in the complete restoration of the old San Jacinto in order to be able to allow Point to stay there. With this move, it is allowing them to move into a more updated facility at the current Peter E. Highland campus.
And option B would be we have to go out and build a new building to house Point, correct?
That we currently do not have a building that would house them. That's correct.
Right. So it's
I want to add that
we are solving more than one issue here.
Correct.
It's a very complex issue, and I was the board member that spoke up on Tier 2 6-9 months ago and said, no, we're not going to do this as a knee-jerk reaction. I was the one that really spoke loudly to that. So we have been talking about this for a while, but I think it's very comprehensive, and there's more going on behind the scenes that are really looking at the district as a whole than what many of us realize. I'm a don't close the school kind of guy, but I'm also a bigger don't lay off an employee. That would be the absolute last thing I would do as a trustee. But given the circumstances that we're in, I think we're looking at a lot of different options that are sustaining the district and that is going to allow us to provide quality education. I want to speak too also about our best assets and resources are what's in the building, not the building. I want to speak a little bit about our teachers that are at Lamar. They are great people. We have not forgot y'all. We talk about y'all all the time, but we also have a commitment to the community as a whole. And if it means we have to go through a little tough time and reallocate our resources to keep you here at Goose Creek, that's my best option rather than even look at a reduction of force down the road. I just wanted to share that with y'all, but I think we need to look at the other piece of the puzzle, and that's Old San Jacinto. We have a commitment to our community, and I haven't forgot it. I sat on that bond committee, and Ms. Garcia, I said, we're going to back this, but San Jacinto's got to go. That's the agreement. But we had to borrow that on time, but that time's ticking. That was more of a comment than a question. Ms. David, I had questions for you as well.
Sure.
But I sent those earlier, and you did address them in the slideshow, so thank you for that.
Thank you.
Before you move on, though, I don't think the solution is to house the Peter Highland students and Point students over our students that are growing up and barely learning. They didn't make any of those decisions that those students did, and they shouldn't be being affected by it. Now, that's not a solution to me. That's a travesty, and I just don't agree with it. And, I want to talk about the committee for a sec, if I can. What schools did y'all give to them to choose from for repurposing? Now, let me ask you this. Was Austin or Crockett Elementary thrown in that proposal by chance?
No, we gave the committee Asheville Smith and Lamar Elementary.
So only those two?
Yes, because they were sitting.
You could roll to that slide and indicate why those were the top two. Right there.
Because they're sitting at 58 and 60%.
Yeah, I get it. But rezoning can take care of that. That's not the issue to me. Rezoning, if we rezone and move some of the students from maybe Asheville and Carver south, I think it would accomplish the same thing. Where we're putting a priority on is Point and Peter Highland. And that, to me, is an injustice to our students that haven't, are learning and growing. And
I think those
especially our neighborhood.
I think that's legitimate concerns, Mr. Ritchie. I agree with you 100%. One of the things that Peter E. Highland campus does, for one, I want to make clear, those students aren't there because they're in trouble. They're not trouble kids necessarily. They have chosen a path other than the traditional campus pathway. But what having more space for them will do, it will capture potentially the 70 or 75 students that disappear within Goose Creek. If they have an alternative pathway than the traditional campus, and as most people in the room know, Peter E. Highland is an alternative campus that allows for expeditious achieving of their academic goals, meaning a kid could graduate in 3 years, even 2.5 years. A student could graduate from that campus because they have either a remedial path or an accelerated path, and we have both students at that campus. What it will do with more capacity than the current campus has for it, it will allow us to possibly pick up some of those 50 to 70 students that are disappearing between 9th and 12th grade. If they knew they had an option like Peter E. Highland that had the space to take them, because Peter E. Highland is currently operating at 100% capacity. There's no space for us to take some of the students that are disappearing on us. So it is, to Mr. Campisi's point, it's multiple purposes, not just one. We're looking at all three, but you make a very valid point.
Well, I would put those people in mobile homes or wherever some temporary setup since they made their choices. The rest of the students, they need a fair chance. That's what I would do. And that's another solution. There's many ways to skin a cat, and that would just be me. They deserve to have a proper education, and you've heard some of the teachers saying that, it's going to disrupt all of their lives.
Well, just to counter just a little is that tonight's presentation is all about facilities. Right. We could have had an academic report tonight from our C&I department, and I just think that most administrators who prepared this presentation would believe that the students at Lamar, even moving, will get a high-quality education wherever they land.
Exactly.
If I could speak to that point. So I was born in Baytown, and I actually attended 4 different elementary schools in Baytown. Just because, single mother, we lived on housing, we were able to move every year, and we did. So I got to attend 4 different elementary schools, one of which was San Jacinto, one of which was Alamo, and one of which was Pumphrey. These are all schools that have moved. So the education quality in our district, I think, is something that I should speak to. I think that kids can go to any school in our district and get a very good education. This is, I personally, I hate to see schools close because I have witnessed 3 of the schools that I've been to close, and it's a very hard decision, of course. And so to say that they're not getting proper education because they're going to a different school in our district, I think is not the whole picture there.
Thank you.
Well, nobody said they weren't getting a proper education. We just said that their education was being disrupted.
You did say they are not going to get a proper education.
No, I said that that we're prioritizing High Point and Peter Highland over our students. That's what I said.
There are students at those schools who are going through a lot, and that's not their fault. It's not something that they chose necessarily.
Yeah. Okay, I would like for us as board members we've had ample opportunity to discuss, but we are repeating ourselves on some things, and thank you, Jesse, for your comment.
Thank you for presenters for presenting this evening.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Madam President, that does bring us to our next item.
Yes.
Which would be Agenda 4A, consideration of approval of the repurposing of Lamar Elementary as outlined within the GC 2035 committee report and as was presented to you this evening.
Okay. The chair will entertain a motion on this item.
I move to approve the repurpose of Lamar Elementary as presented tonight.
I'll second.
Okay. I have a motion from Mr. Clem and a second from Ms. Guy to approve the item to repurpose Lamar Elementary. Do we have any discussion?
Yes. I will be voting against this. It's in my district. I didn't this is the reasons I will be voting against it. I didn't believe in administration's numbers that they gave, the 2.4 million. We're going to be spending money when we modify Lamar. They didn't give us no data on the costs. We're making decisions that we don't know. We're going into blindly doing these things. I know that if it was a school like Crockett or Austin, we wouldn't be here today. I also believe that the committee was guided, and it's not the committee's fault. They did their due diligence in their work, but they were only given certain choices and presented the information that they were wanting to give them. I agree with, or I believe that rezoning would accomplish the same goal, and lastly but not least is I think we're rushing this decision. We heard one of the teachers say that it took 6 hours to come to this conclusion. Of course, there was nothing else to decide. But, we don't make those kind of decisions, and we shouldn't make those kind of decisions in a rush. I think me personally, I think this should have been tabled and gone back to the drawing board, but I will be voting against it. And
do we have any other discussion? Mr. Sampson?
I think that we are looking at a situation that if it had been Asheville Smith, a group would be here. If it would have been Carver, a group would be here. I think that what we have to do is look at the whole picture, is that we are trying to repurpose in order to develop our school district a little bit more to help all kids. Elementary kids are resilient. They can be in any class or go anywhere. We're looking at trying to have a situation, and I'm been up and down about this situation because back in the day when they took Harlem out of my community, McNair, and moved it to the freeway, I was disappointed about that. And a lot of y'all are too young to remember that. So, but I think we have to look at it from the big picture. And Mr. Renthriel, I understand where you're coming from. I don't think that one way or the other we have to make a general decision about the district and the kids we have in here and the kids that we are trying to put in the school, because you got to remember, all of them are our kids, whether they elementary or high school, are trying to recover their credits to be someone in this community. And as Mr. Clem and the others have stated, we're here for the kids. And that doesn't mean the little kid, that doesn't mean the high school kids. We're talking about all kids. And that's the purpose I serve on the board, not to be, partial one way or the other. And
thank you, Mr. Sampson.
That's the way.
Thank you.
And my last thing would be, if we do vote on this, I recommend that the next elementary, if it comes up, be called Lamar Elementary.
I had my light up for discussion.
Just like we did Pumphrey.
We did not discuss that if this board votes to consolidate, what we would do with the name. Would we take that in a separate action, or would the motion and the second want to address that at this point, or do we want to look at that separately?
Yes, let's look at that separately.
If it passes.
It's a recommendation for an agenda item. Okay. Okay. Ms. Campisi, Yes. Okay. There being no further discussion, all in favor, please raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 4. I'm sorry, Jesse. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 4. Any opposed? 1 opposed. and seeing for 5-4, 1 opposed, 6-4, 1 opposed against, the motion carries. Okay. Dr. O'Brien?
We're moving
We
to
will now
action item
move to
4B.
4B, okay. We will now, instructions for our board. The board will now recess into closed session pursuant to the following section of the Texas Open Meeting Act, Texas Government Code Section 551.071, 551.072, 551.073, 551.074, 551.075, 551.076, 551.082, 551.083, 084, and 087. No action will be taken while the board is in closed session. It is now 7:45. No action was taken while the board was in closed session.
Madam President, administration brings before the board for consideration of personnel this evening. Action item 4D. Recommend that you accept the resignations and retirements and elections as presented.
Okay, do I have a motion for approval for the consent agenda items presented?
I'll move to approve the elections and resignations and retirements as presented.
Second.
Okay, was motion by Ms. Guy, second by Mr. Clem. All in favor, raise your hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, unanimous vote.
And one administrative personnel. The administration brings before the board Catherine Ward as Educational Technology Specialist, recommending approval.
Do I have a motion for approval?
So moved.
Have
Second.
motion by Mr. Clem and second by Ms. Guy. All in favor, please raise your hand. Unanimous, 7 votes for. And that's it? Okay. Ooh, that was the best, nice. Okay, there will be no further business before this board. This meeting is now adjourned at 8:09. Good night. Thank you.